Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of In the Prog Seat. Yes, it is Tuesday night. We've got a big crew here today. All 9 spots filled up. The Brady Bunch, the Partridge Family, the Hollywood Squares, whatever you want to call us, but we are in the Prog Seat tonight. So we've got in the house, and this is the order that everybody's going to talk today, all about our favorite prog, fusion, and prog metal bass players. We've got Armando Venditti. We've got Louis Nasser. Chuck Alvarez, Anthony Ferraro, Stephen Reed, Eric Porter, George Lemie, and Rick Labonte. So again, discussion today is all about our favorite bass players. Like I said, progressive rock, progressive metal, jazz fusion. There's a lot of great ones. We're going to give you our top 5. Really difficult top 5 to choose. I mean, it's like there's so many of them, and everybody's already rolling their eyes and smiling like, yeah, this was a good one. So Armando, we're going to kick it off with you with your number 5.
Okay, my number 5 is Stanley Clark. Fantastic bass player. I learned more about him watching one of your shows, Pete. Funny enough. From his work with Return to Forever, his solo work, I mean, amazing. He also worked with Stuart Copeland in a group called Animal Logic in the 80s, which was more of a pop-oriented type of group, which I thought were great. But yeah, through all of his albums, really, Journey to Love and Self-Titled. I mean, and one of the ones I heard was Toys of Men, which once I heard it was like, Christ, he is really good. He has a very lyrical bass style.
On both the upright and the electric.
Yeah, good point.
All right. He is all over the fretboard, like, oh my God. So yeah, that's my number 5. Clean and concise.
Cool. I'm sure we're going to hear more about Stanley Clark in the minutes and to come. So
and like you say, just quickly, like you always say, there's too many to make number 1, so everyone's got to go on the list. You got to make a list, right? So there you go.
Yep, absolutely.
Armando, Journey to Love is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing it for Bob in the car one day, and he was just like, who the hell is this? Like, what the? Like, I told him, I was like, Jesus Christ. He's like, okay, I'm in. Like, he loved it. He loved it. So
excellent. Louis.
All right, just one quick disclaimer. Out of all the assignments I ever had for this program, this is by far the only one I can truly say is impossible. Right? Some people may know I'm a bass player myself.
It says the bass player, exactly.
It's very difficult for me to be like, a reductionist. And I'm trusting everybody in this panel to talk about the usual suspects who deserve everybody's attention. So I'm going to talk about some guys who I think are just as good, but people have probably not heard about. This is my only out because I don't, otherwise, we're going to hear the same names 9 times. And I think this is a good thing. So without any further ado, my number 5 is a guy who is from Milwaukee. He is not that I'm his musical peer necessarily, but he's like my generation, my group of musicians. His name is William Kopecky. And for people who are not familiar with that band, it was a trio composed of the 3 Kopecky brothers, Joe, William, and Paul. Paul died more than a decade ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Diabetes complications. Yeah, Will lives in France. I haven't really seen him play in many, many years. He's in Marseille, but he also plays with a techno, progressive metal band called Haiku Funeral. He's a great guy, and this happens to be my favorite. You can't see it. It's Kopecky. The album is called Blood. So number 5, William Kopecky.
A great talent, a super nice guy, and he's done a ton of shit.
Oh, yeah.
He's not hard to find. Yeah, really good player.
yeah, I found that album on Amazon. I was gonna buy it at some point. But
It's worth getting. It's one of the better ones. Yeah. Yeah. Good choice. I was hoping someone would pick him. Very cool. All right, Chuck, you're up.
All right, my number 5 is Richard Sinclair, Caravan and Camel. You know, he's one of these guys that most known for his distinctive vocals, is distinctive English vocals. You know, the way he enunciates everything when he sings. But people tend to forget how great of a bass player he is. And the album that I always think of him on is In the Land of the Gray and Pink. So if you ever want to hear how brilliant a bass player he is, I just love the guy. You know, what's a very nice guy, very assuming, and couldn't leave him off this list. He's my number 5.
Good choice. Really good choice. Anthony.
My number 5 favorite bass player is somebody who passed way too young. Wasn't on a lot of records, but the records he was on made me he blew my mind every time. I'm going with Jethro Tull, Heavy Horses, 1978, John Glasscock. He was with Jethro Tull for 3 or 4 albums, died at 29. But man, I think it was the best rhythm section Jethro Tull ever had.
Yep.
One of my favorite tracks off of this, Journeyman, with he and Barrymore Barlow on the kit, fantastic. So I'm going John Glasscock from Jethro Tull in the mid 70s was prime time for him.
Great selection. Yeah, I forgot all about it.
Good choice.
He's so good. Yeah.
If people haven't heard his work with Carmen.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Aggressive flamenco kind of a thing. It's good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can still get BGO Records had the first 2 albums on a single set that they released a bunch of years ago. Definitely worth getting. So
they do a lot of that though, don't they? Like they
Yeah,
combine
yeah.
albums and- 'cause
absolutely.
I have the Colosseum 2 album. Sorry, second and third album on one disc. So
Yeah, they're good to get, especially if if they go out of print and you can't get the the standalone ones. That's really good, and they usually have nice booklets with lots of information and whatnot. So yeah. All right, our center square, all the way from Scotland. What do you got for us?
Well, I'm not cheating, but I'm going to kind of do 2 in 1 here.
you can choose.
I think we've probably all been at gigs over the years where you turn up to see a band, and it's another band that blows you away. So I turned up to see a band called Tesseract, who I still really like. And opening for them, or middle on the bill, was The Contortionist. And their bassist is a guy called Jordan Eberhard. And The Contortionists are a band that kind of doing kind of post-rock, post-metal, bit of metalcore in there, but it's very progressive, very technical. The standard of playing just threw me, absolutely threw me. And Jordan Eberhard was just phenomenal. I mean, he's forceful, it's full on, it's heavy, but it's intricate. And the reason I say that it's 2 in 1 is because I don't have a prop, because I haven't actually got an album, but I listen to them a lot. But on the night, he played a lot of bass lines by Christopher Tilley, who was on the first 2 albums by the band. So those bass lines are phenomenal. But it was Jordan Eberhard I saw playing them. So I'm going with Jordan, because that's who I saw. He's on the most recent album that they've done, which is just outstanding. So yeah, that's my number 5, Jordan Eberhard from The Contortionist. Fantastic, underrated bassist, really good.
Good young band.
But what about Amos Williams from Tesseract?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was a great lineup, I have to say. It was just Nordic giants opened who were bizarre in a very good way. 2 people never really faced the audience. The whole show was on screens, and they played with lights behind them. You couldn't see them once in the entire thing. So the 3 bands running after each other was what a bill it was, but really good. Yeah. So I could have chosen any of those 2, but yeah, really good.
Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. All right, Eric, my fellow New Yorker, what's going on?
How are you?
Right.
Well, my number 5 is played with 3 artists that are in my favorites, or rank in my favorites. And like Lewis said, it's just difficult to pick these guys. I mean, we could have picked 5 bass players who played with Steely Dan, right? I mean, there's just so many guys out there. But my number 5 is Tom Fowler. He played with Steve Hackett, Zappa, and Jean-Luc Ponty. And I actually just listened to Roxy and Elsewhere today. just a great player, great feel. And all these guys, I'm sure everyone we mentioned is playing with a great drummer, right? I mean, these guys, you get just like you said with Glasscock, these rhythm sections are amazing. Just a great bass player, and just the number of, he's one of these guys, he's just played with a number of people. And he's still out there today doing stuff, I believe. So.
Nice.
Kudos to you for putting him on your list, because Tom is one of those guys that, like, whenever you're talking Zappa, he always gets mentioned. But when you're just talking bass players, he doesn't always get mentioned, because of course we're going to talk about all the guys, I'm sure, that always get mentioned. But he is a absolute rock star, that dude. Yeah, great choice. Yeah.
Thank you.
Eric, I've known Please Don't Touch for like 25 to 30 years, and I just realized today that Tom Fowler played bass on that record.
Yes.
I don't think I ever knew that.
There you go.
Yep. All right, George, I know you got someone real interesting to tell us about.
Come on, George.
Number 5 is from France, Bonnie Brunell.
Oh, great choice.
He
Excellent.
emerged in the mid-70s, plays with Didier Lockwood, plays on a couple of Chick Corea albums. Then he starts making solo albums on his own. A couple of them we talked about in our 80s Fusion episode, this being one of them. Momentum, this is great. Then he's a little bit up and down in the 90s. He emerges in the 2000s with his band Cab, one of the best fusion albums bands of the last 20 years. This being a good one to get, Cab 4. In recent years, he's gone back to the solo album route. Primarily a 5-string fretless player, but he also plays upright. He can slap, he taps a little bit, but he's mostly a fingerstyle funk player, like Rocco Prestia or Giorgio. That's kind of his forte, and that and songwriting. So my number 5 is Bunny Brunell.
Awesome. Great player.
Yep.
Sorry,
Thank you for that,
George.
George.
I had a little cat fight behind me.
George has just got me into Cab, so I just started hearing this guy, and Cab is fantastic. So
Oh, yeah.
awesome.
That's a really talented band. Awesome. All right, Rick. Nice shirt, by the way.
Thank you very much.
Nice.
Wear this proudly. How you doing, guys? Good to see you guys. I miss you all. To pick 5, I try to make sure I'm going to pick a fusion player, progressive rock, progressive metal, because there's so many people that we're going to miss. And so I feel your pain. But here's a person that probably don't get mentioned enough. Plays fusion, plays progressive metal. And I don't know which example I should give, but maybe Dave Larue from the Steve Morse Band, or
Yes.
Dixie Dregs,
Dixie
or
Dregs.
Flying Color. Take your pick. That guy shines in everything he does. And he plays enough to be technical to give you the wow factor, but plays for the song. Like, he's not trying to show off. He plays what the song needs, but he'll give it an extra if he could. And I always thought he know how to balance that from being technical and being creative. And Dave Larue got to be mentioned.
Nice.
Great pick. Yeah, he's awesome. He's so good. So good.
Mhm.
All right, my number 5 actually wasn't in my original 5. So I was like percolating my list for the last week or so. And then I got back from this event that I went to today. And just before we sat down to do this, I'm like, there is no way I can keep this guy out of the top 5. The guy that I booted is like a legend, but I was like, you know what? Tony Levin, for God's sakes, has to be on this list. I mean, he's like not the MVP of so many projects and bands and records that he's done in his career. It's like he had to be on here, whether it's King Crimson Discipline and all those great King Crimson albums, or whether it's with Peter Gabriel or Liquid Tension Experiment or all the other things that he's done. I mean, Tony Levin is just incredible, whether it's on the bass, the upright, or the stick. I mean, this guy's just absolutely incredible. He's a super nice guy. And Anthony just went Starburst on his first.
Always gotta be
Cat
original.
fight.
I'm telling you, there's some serious shit going on over there, right?
Holy shit.
So yeah, Tony Levin. Tony Levin, my number 5. So I just couldn't deny him. He's got to be on this list. I mean, there's so many great players, right? I mean, like Lewis said, this is an absolute ridiculous assignment. That's this genre is so known, or these genres, I should say, is so known for excellent musicians. And man, just the bass playing is just out of control in prog fusion and prog metal. Just really is. So anyway, back to Armando.
Okay. And also just very quickly, when you gave me this assignment, I thought, okay, how am I going to do this? Right? Like, how am I going to pick? But it actually made me, take the song and turn it around and look at the song from the inside out, right? Like, just in terms of the bass playing. Because when you hear a song, you usually hear the guitarists or the keyboards, even the drums more, but you really don't usually listen, hear the bass too much, right? So for me, my number 4, I'm gonna fuck up the name, but whatever. John Myung from Dream Theater. Okay.
Yeah.
That's because that guy truly is always buried in the mix.
Yeah,
and it's a shame.
But he's a rock.
But when something is buried, we say you got me younged. It's like,
yeah. I mean, but it's true. It's like he's basically, the foundation. Him and what's his Mike? Sorry, his name is the drummer.
Mike Portnoy.
Mike Mangini now. Yeah.
Mike Mangini. But I mean, like, those two together. I mean, like, damn. So I mean, when I heard Scenes from a Memory Part 2, Metropolis, that floored me, that whole album. But just to hear his lines and just, what, that's it. I picked them. That's my number 4.
Yeah, to experience John, you got to go see him live because
I was just gonna say that
he's very present live. Yeah, it's a shame that so many of their albums, he's there, but it's like he's not, right? It's like it's a shame because he is an amazing bass player.
But that's what I said. That's what I mean. Like, I had to sit there and listen.
Really listen, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like just again, flip the song around and try and listen to it from the inside out.
Yeah.
They have corrected it with their latest record.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, I was gonna say that.
What was that? Sorry, I missed it.
With the last album, the one they're about to release, they really tweaked the mix, and now the guitar is not covering every known frequency in the spectrum. So now the bass can actually be heard, and
yeah.
You can also really hear him play well with I think it was called Jelly Jam.
Yeah.
Jelly Jam. Yep.
Yeah. With Ty Tabor and Rod Morgenstein.
That's right. That was a great little trio that he was with for a while. They could really. He's a great musician, no doubt about it.
You see, you're teaching me stuff here, Louis, because I don't know this shit. So I'm like, you're throwing shit at me. It's like, oh my God, I gotta go buy more stuff. I'm broke already.
Of course, that's what it's all about, right?
It's like,
welcome to the club.
I'd have to stay home for 6 months straight and listen to everything I bought, not leave the house for 6 months to catch up. So,
Okay.
Anyway, that's my number 4. So,
All right. Cool.
Beautiful.
Back to you,
All
Louis.
right. My next guy up is depends on your listening habits. You may or may not know even of his band, but I am talking, of course, of Joe Lester from Intronaut.
Nice.
This happens to be my favorite record for them. The Direction of Last Things is what this is called. He is a phenomenal player who happens to make himself be heard and plays great lines using a fretless bass in progressive metal. So all he plays is a fretless bass that was made to him by Wall and to his specifications. And he has a very unique sound. The way he uses the dark glass distortion with some other effects is just great. I absolutely love this guy's playing. And if you've never heard him or his band, I highly recommend you give Intronaut a listen. Absolutely amazing band. And Joe is a great player.
Their first couple albums were really good. I haven't listened to their last few, but the first few are really good. Long songs, and just a lot of really. They're kind of hard to describe too, because they're progressive metal, but they have a little bit of extreme metal. They got some post rock. I mean, it's really cool stuff. Yeah.
Worked for me. That sounds great.
Yeah, I think you might dig them, Stephen. They're pretty good. Yeah. Are they still on Century Media? That's who they were with for a while.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
This is not their last album. I think this is the one before their last. The last one is I'm having a case of the fucking old. I don't remember what it's called.
We all got it.
We all are.
It's a blue one. It's not quite as great as this one, in my opinion, but it's still great. You know.
Cool. All right, Chuck, back to you.
My number 4, we spoke about him quite a few times. Matter of fact, the last time we spoke about him, Renaissance is John Kemp. And if you really want to hear how great this man is as a bass player, this is the album that you should get. Live at Carnegie Hall. What's it? This guy never gets mentioned, but you know, he's up there with the Chris Squires, man. He's a brilliant bass player. John Kemp from Renaissance.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he should be on my list. He's amazing. If anybody loves the sound of the Rickenbacker in like a lead capacity, he's the guy, because there's no lead guitar player in Renaissance, and he's like along with the piano, he's the soloist. And yeah, that bass solo his and Ashes Are Burning on that album.
Oh man, this kills you, man.
Oh,
I'm
amazing.
sold.
Great choice. Great choice. All right, Anthony. Anthony's back from
my number 4 goes to the jazz fusion genre. I'm going with the fretless monster himself, Mr. Percy Jones.
Nice.
This is their debut, Unorthodox Behavior. What can I say about Percy? He played with Brand X, with Phil on the kit for a little bit. Percy also guested on a couple Brian Eno records, especially Another Green World. Just a sound perfect for fusion, just a fretless maniac. I've seen Brand X reunion a couple times with Percy, and the consummate professional. Always, you know, just no change in his look. He's out there to play, and just a fantastic musician. So I'm going with Percy Jones with my number 4 pick, and Unorthodox Behavior is one of my favorite records he plays on, which is from 1976.
Nice.
Heck, I just I'm supposed to see them. They got canceled, which you know, even though he's not with them anymore.
Right.
Goodsall's a double pneumonia or something, so the show I was supposed to see is going to be canceled in another week or two.
But you can catch Percy with the group Pact, which is Percy, Alex Skolnick, some other guys that
He's got something else too, Lewis, like MJ12 or something, or
Yeah, they're
Anthony
gonna play some gigs too.
Right. Yeah, I heard they're doing some.
look up Leonardo. He can give you all the information on the shows.
Yeah.
That Pact is awesome. Like improvised, just crazy creative music. Amazing.
Yeah, Pac just played at that little prog festival up in Rochester a couple weeks ago, if I remember, or middle of September or something like that. Yeah. Cool. All right. Stephen, you're up.
So I'm going to adapt as I go because there's so many to talk about. So my number 4 was Tony Levin. That's where I was going with that. So there's a bassist he's on the beat, he's round the beat, he's all over the beat, he's everywhere, but he's always rhythmical. But there's so many different styles of bassists. So my number 4, I'm going to go for Chris Wilston from Muse. Is where I'm going to go there, because the reason for that is that without him, nothing happens in that band. That he is the basis of what they do, because you've got a guitar player who's all over the place, wild solos and gimmicks on the fretboard, falsetto vocals, a drummer that's seldom just laying it down, it's always round the kit, it's always on the go. So the bassist just needs to be all the time, massive and in your face, and that's what he is. And all of the really big, bombastic moments all revolve around what he does. So that's my number 4.
I love that pick, and I just want to add that that's true of any actual good bass player.
Yeah.
If you take Tony Levin from Sledgehammer, that's not the tune, right?
Yeah.
And we can just go down the list, right? So you're right.
Absolutely.
Very cool. All right, Eric, back to you, number 4.
My number 4, I discovered him when I was in high school, and it was because of a guitar player that I bought the album. And I'm following up with Rick, but I'm going a different way. So it's Jerry Peak from Steve Morse Band, the introduction. And I know he wasn't around very long. I think he played on two or three records with Steve Morse. But it's the first thing I ever heard, even before the Dregs. The introduction was the first thing I ever got from Steve Morse, and it just blew me away. Again, playing with a great drummer, Rod Morgenstein. And, you know, when you're listening for something or you buy something to listen to the guitar, and the bass player and the drummer are blowing you away as much as the guitar player, you know, that pretty much says it all. And I wish he was still doing stuff. I don't know, maybe he gigs around Atlanta from what I've heard, but other than that, I haven't heard anything he's done recording wise in years, but that's a fantastic record. It's still my favorite Steve Morse Band record.
Great stuff. Yeah, he's got a really good style. Worked really well on those first couple albums. Good choice. All right, George.
Number 4 is from Canada. The only 6-string guy on my list, Alain Caron. Spent the 80s in the most prolific Canadian fusion band, Uzeb. And he breaks out in the 90s with a solo career, starting with this one, Le Band. This is must-have kind of stuff. He also starts playing sessions in New York with Mike Stern and also Stern's wife, Lenny Stern. This is another really good one. A little bit softy, a little bit intense, a little mix. He's another guy that plays upright. He's a slapper. He got a unique slap style. He's not like a Wooten guy that's throwing a million notes at you. It's more lyrical. Like he slapped Donnelly, the melody of Donnelly. That was cool. But yeah, he's still going today with the solo album career, but he's been making noise lately about maybe going the local route. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, Alain Caron.
Very cool. All right, Rick, back to you.
Okay, well, like my buddy, I picked Stanley Clark, and especially school days. This was profound for me to listen to this bass player be the dominant force. I mean, like you know you're a good band. Good player when you can sell albums being the bass player. Because everybody always make the joke that the bass player is the last person us people look at as a star, but not this guy. You can't help but notice this guy. And he's been a hired gun too. You could have did a whole show about hired guns about this guy, Stanley Clark. He plays with everybody. And so I don't have to go that any further. We all know that. But School Days is the album I like to recommend though.
My number 4, same guy, Stanley Clark. Got to be on my list. I love Stanley. His work in Return to Forever is legend. Most of those early solo albums are legend, whether he's doing jazz or fusion or straight up funk. I mean, his tone is amazing. He's a great technician, but more importantly, he plays with a lot of feel. And I have always been a big Stanley Clark fan, and he's still kicking ass at, what is he, 75 years old now?
71.
71?
No, 70, forgive me, 70.
70? Yeah, he's still amazing. And just love him to death. And whether it's the guest, he's, like you mentioned, Rick, he's guest starred everywhere, and he's done all these great collaborations. I still remember, like it was yesterday, seeing him and Alan Holdsworth and Steve Smith and Randy Brecker playing at a little club by me, the Jazz Explosion, in the late 80s. And I was just like, there was so much talent up on that stage, my mind was going to explode. And having Stanley and Alan playing side by side was like absolutely incredible. So yeah, Stanley Clark is my number 4 as well. Back to Armando.
Nice.
Okay. My number 3 is Jaco Pastorius.
Love him.
Great choice.
Damn, that's all I can say about him. He's talented beyond belief. His work with the Weather Report, his solo work, he's worked with Matheny, he's worked with Joni Mitchell. He was a talent, and he was also very self-destructive.
Yeah.
In the end, so.
Mental illness.
What was it? Sorry?
Mental illness mixed with drugs, man.
Yeah.
Not a good combination.
Yeah. again, very lyrical style on the bass. I mean, I'm listening to him, and I don't smoke, but I could have smoked a cigarette. It was that good. He was that good. And I mean, I was watching.
Better than sex, right?
What was that? Sorry.
Better than sex, right?
Recently, for me, yeah. Let's go there. This is a G-rated show, guys. But, wait till after 9 o'clock my time. Anyway, but no, I mean, he was just a one-off. He was just an original. And I mean, I was watching very quickly. I have a documentary on him that Robert, how do you say his last name? Trujillo?
Trujillo.
Yeah.
Metallica.
Yeah.
That he put together a documentary on him, and unbelievable. I mean, he just had so much talent, but he wanted to do it all in so little time, And just quickly, he was playing in a club in New York, and Joni Mitchell went to see him. And she said that he got her up on stage. He begged her to go up on stage. And then when she started singing, he started screwing with her mic, like he pulling away, pulling out the lead and stuff, and just sort of like he was on a bender at that point. Like he didn't know what he wanted to do. Basically, he was just going over the edge, basically, and which is sad because he was such a bloody talent.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my number 3. So
yeah, there's actually a lot out there for anybody who's into Giorgio, besides for the couple solo albums and those Weather Report albums. I mean, and the Matheny albums, he worked with Matheny twice, the Joni Mitchell stuff. I mean, there are all these like live albums with him and Mike Stern. There's you can get now the show that was him and John McLaughlin and Tony Williams, right? The Trio of Doom, I believe.
Trio of Doom.
Yeah, there's a lot of Jaco Pastorius stuff out there, recordings that you can get a hold of. I mean, there's no end. I have like a ton of them, and there's so many more. It's kind of like the Grateful Dead thing, right? No shortage of live albums. Same thing with Giorgio. After he died, they released all sorts of stuff because he would play like in the clubs in the Greenwich Village in New York City all the time. I mean, throughout his bad, dark years, he was always playing with someone every night, and he was always being recorded. So yeah, whether it's some of the stuff's probably not that good, but it's still Giorgio, right? So.
yeah,
I think if you want to really summarize that, what Armando was saying about the clash of the torture that he was going through mentally and his genius, nothing better than the song "Crisis" on that album. That's it. If you listen to that, that's what that is.
Yeah,
it is an amazing record. It's a difficult record, but if you really just give it time, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Nice.
The legend. All right, Lewis.
Well, I'm glad you guys are mentioning all the right names, so I don't have to talk about them, and I can talk about guys that are not that well known. So thank you, everybody.
You're welcome.
My number 3 is a guy who is an absolute hero of mine, who doesn't normally get mentioned. Because that's the running joke. Like the difference between a toilet and a bass player is that a toilet only takes shit from one asshole at a time, right? Nobody like the bass player is kind of like you've all said, hidden, right? It's not really something you know. But this guy is kind of like the Giorgio of metal. His name is Steve DiGiorgio.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he is an absolute beast.
Yeah.
You can hear him in the latest album by Testament, Titans of Creation, which if you guys have not heard it, I cannot recommend it enough. This album is absolutely killer. You can hear him, and he's played with everybody, but one of my favorite things he did with Death was this guy right here. Death is an incredible band in its own right, and Pete did a great episode on them when he ranked the albums. But definitely Steve DiGiorgio, number 3. Please give that a listen. Again, there's something about fretless bass players who play like extreme metal or progressive metal that is just, to my ear, it's just perfect, right? It just really, really works. And
he's another one of those guys, these hard like guns for hire, who just shows up everywhere and kills it. I mean, he's going to be on the new Spirits of Fire album with Chris Caffrey and company, and Mark Zonder, and Yeah, he's just everywhere he shows up, he's just absolutely amazing. Such
Yeah,
a
there's a real intensity to what he does. It's quite captivating.
Yeah.
Just incredible.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Chuck. Chuck's wearing his Mets jersey tonight. We're not a happy bunch these days. Not to go off on a tangent, but man, it sucks being a Mets
Let him
fan.
laugh. He's gonna giggle. Let it go. Let it go.
Oh man, just let it go. Exactly, man. At least Eric still has something to smile about.
I do. And a good weekend on the Sox.
Yeah, I see that. All right, gentlemen. My number 3 is from the departed Victor Bailey. Weather Report, Victor Bailey.
Victor Bailey, yeah.
Reports Procession. Another great bass player, that actually came after Jocko in the band. And he was just as imaginative, just as great a bass player as Jocko was. He just happened to have the misfortune of joining the band after Jocko. So that people tend to think that their music after Jocko and Peter Erskine left, that the music wasn't worth listening to. But Procession is a great album. And if you ever want to hear how great this band is, they still were piping out some great stuff on this album alone. Victor Bailey, sadly, he passed away from, if I'm not mistaken, I think he had, I'm trying to remember what he died from, but
Something weird.
Yeah, it was something very weird.
Yeah.
Charrette's tooth or something, I forget what it was called.
Guillain Barre, maybe something like that.
Something like that, but I know it's very similar to having, ALS.
Yeah.
So that's what he had, and it robbed the world of a great bass player. And Victor Bailey, just one of those amazing bass players. Weather Report Processions. He's my number 3.
And I remember too, and I don't know what it was called in self-titled, but his first solo album was
nice.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was. It just called Victor Bailey? I don't remember, Chuck.
No, I don't think it was called Victor Bailey.
I think Bottoms Up.
Yeah,
that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, when he came out, he was like, he was being compared with Marcus Miller because Marcus was kind of the shit. He was the guy in most of the 80s, right? But I think Victor quite possibly had the better chops. I don't know. I mean, they're both great. But Anthony, back to you.
My number 3 has already been mentioned, but that's the way it goes. Mr. Tony Levin. This is Peter Gabriel's debut from 1977. What can you say about Tony Levin? He's played with Peter Gabriel. He's played with Pink Floyd. He's played with John Lennon. He's played with Alice Cooper. He's like the utility bass player of bass players. The father of the Chapman stick. His bass playing on the King Crimson albums are legendary. His playing with Peter Gabriel is legendary. So I'm going number 3, Mr. Tony Levin, who doesn't age. He's 71, 72, and he's still kicking ass today.
Actually, I have a little tidbit for you. Tony Levin was actually supposed to be on this album. What's that? Joseph Zawinul actually reached out to him, but he just couldn't take the job because he was already doing so many things afterwards, and they needed him for a couple of shows on to record that album, but he had to rescind on it.
I could see Tony in Weather Report.
Well, Joseph Zawinul wanted him. He really wanted him.
Joe wants you. I mean, look at how many people took that call over the years, right?
Oh man.
Yeah. All right, Stephen, our center square, back to you.
Well, my number 3, I think you could arguably suggest, has taken quite a lot of inspiration from Tony Levin, because I'm going with Nick Beggs. That's where I'm heading with that, because the guy can play. He's got real presence. I mean, where he started from, certainly over here, Enemy Kajagoogoo, and there's all of that sort of stuff. You can poke fun at it. Even back then, he could play, to be fair. What I really like about his work is the dynamics in there. He's a storyteller. He's capable of really being tender and caring, and he kind of holds the melody, but he can be big and bombastic as well. And he really, plays for the song, but plays within the song. And I really like him. I'll be honest and say, I mean, he's in lots of different things now. I don't necessarily enjoy everything that he does musically quite as much as I like his playing all the time. But as a player, he's absolutely outstandingly good.
He's also incredibly funny, especially in social media. He was always posting pictures from the road wearing like outrageous, skimpy bathing suits or naked.
I was going to say, you're wearing nothing, Lewis.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's going to be that kind of a show? Okay. I had no idea. I wasn't ready.
Yeah, he's a guy that seems to be determined to just enjoy it all, isn't he?
The only thing that seems to bother him is if you poke fun at Kajagoogoo.
Well, I said musically he was great, no, I didn't.
I don't know why he's one day I was bored and I started messaging him just with lyrics from Kajagoogoo, and he was like, "Stop!" And people started it became this incredibly funny thing, and he was just like seriously pissed. I don't know why. I thought it was impossible to annoy him.
I know it wasn't Kajagoogoo, but I won't hear a bad word about Never Ending Story by Limal. I just won't have it. That's a piece of that song.
I think we're going off in a whole different direction here, guys. I mean, the only time I heard Kajagoogoo was Too Shy back in '83, I think it was. And it's like, okay, that's enough. Once was enough.
Oh, why do I? Anyway, sorry, enough Kajagoogoo.
Oh my God.
There we go. Gotta get the karaoke going tonight. All right.
You know what's funny about Begsy is Stephen. He for years I don't think anybody knew what he was doing, and then I saw he was playing. He got the job with Hackett, and he played with Hackett at Nearfest in 2010. And I'm like, and he was dressed in this kind of like this kilt, and it was hilarious. It was like, oh my God, that's Nick Beggs from Kajagoogoo. And now he's playing with both Steve Hackett and Stephen Wilson.
Yeah, and I'll say as a proud Scotsman, he wears the kilt well.
Not everybody can wear those kilts, right?
It's true.
No.
Just a little side note, if you guys really want to listen to a good Steve Hackett album, Mediterranean Afternoon, I believe it is. Amazing. I think it came out in January of this year.
Yeah, it's the recent one, right?
Yeah.
I've heard great things, but I have not heard it though. But I heard
It's really good. It's really good.
Well, it's Steve Hackett. I mean, come on. It's gotta be good.
There you go, right?
Quite prolific.
Yeah.
Very prolific. He's got 2 albums out this year alone.
Yeah, he's busy.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. All right, Eric, back to you.
So my number 3, I've never heard anything solo from this guy, but the artist he plays with, I've been listening to a lot since he passed, Chick Corea. And he also plays on one of my favorite pop albums of all time, Jellyfish Belly Button. It's John Patatucci. And I just picked up the acoustic band live. Fantastic player. I love the acoustic stuff. I think it's phenomenal. And obviously the electric band he's played with for years, and just great stuff all the way around.
John is a monster.
Oh, he really is. Nice guy too, man.
Yeah.
Very nice guy.
Some of the best mugs ever in a live setting too. This guy's faces when he solos, it's just
Get into it. Get into it, right?
Robin Trower's got nothing on him, let me tell you.
Eric, was he a session guy for Jellyfish, or did he actually tour with
He
them?
played on 3 tracks on that record. I don't know if they had a connection to him or not, but I knew he plays fretless, I think, on, or it might be acoustic bass on Bedspring Kiss. And I think he's on 2 other tracks.
I think he was a session guy. I think he was a session guy for them because they were 2.
That's another one I didn't know. And I've known that album for what, 30 years, 40 years, 30 years.
Yeah, that's 91, I think. So that goes back.
Yeah, 90.
Yeah, great player. Yeah, we're covering a lot of ground here. There's a lot of great guys being mentioned.
Yes, we are.
So George has one coming up. What do you got, George?
my number, what is it, 3? My number 3 is Matthew Garrison.
Love him, man.
Talk about lineage. His dad was the bass player for John Coltrane.
Yep.
And Coltrane's big year.
Oh, good Lord.
Loved him.
He emerges in the early 90s with Steve Colbin's 5 Elements. His breakthrough is kind of hooking up with John McLaughlin in Heart of Things in 1997. does a couple albums with them. They dissolve. Then he starts doing these solo albums.
He has a wonderful tone, man.
This is incredible. Like,
Yep.
such a fully realized statement for a young kid. Production, songs, the technique's way over the top. The follow-up is more electronic, but still maintaining a high level with the bass playing. He's in recent years, he's doing a lot of production. He's got a space in New York called Shapeshifter Lab. He hosts a lot, like the first Snarky Puppy live DVD was shot there. He hosts a lot of stuff there. Still playing some sessions, but his recording has slowed down. But yeah, he's a must-hear guy. Matthew Garrison.
Matthew Garrison.
That's where that MJ12's playing, Shapeshifter in October. Leo set that up.
Yeah, I think they recorded the record there too.
Nice. All right, Rick, back to you.
Okay, well, I'm glad I get to mention his name before you guys because I know he's on our list. Unfortunately, we lost him. He's not only a great bassist as far as for prog music, progressive music, but he was so melodic and tasteful about doing it. And you know who we're talking about, Chris Squire.
Great Chris Squire.
I had to pick this album because he's my favorite of all the Yes solo albums. I think it's like one of my top favorite of the, but I could have picked any Yes album because you know him. He shines not only harmony wise, but he always played the bass, and he played in the register that he finds a frequency that he can cut through with everything that's going on when you have a big band like Yes. And a lot of guys like to play at the bottom, and he'll find his way just to cut through. He's very melodic. And what I like about his playing the most is the moving parts. It's the whole part. Like, he doesn't stand still. He's constantly moving. It's happening, and that makes it really progressive. But Chris Squire, without saying.
Sweet sounds of the Rickenbacker once again.
Yes, you got to appreciate it.
Yep. Cool. You might be hearing more about that guy later on, I think, right? So
I figured I would.
Yeah, it's possible. I think Stephen mentioned before something about bombasticness, and my number 3 guy had to be on my list because I think could be the most bombastic bass player I've ever heard, or one of them anyway. He has graced the stage with bands like Talus and the David Lee Roth Band, and did some jazz fusion with Niacin. Right now he's playing with the Winery Dogs and with Sons of Apollo.
Amazing bass player, man.
Mr. Billy Sheehan, who can do it all. Yes. I mean, he's, I don't know. When you go see Billy Sheehan live, it doesn't matter what band he's playing with, you walk out of there and your ears are doing this. I mean, he shakes the freaking rafters in a big way. And he's just so talented, so nimble. And like I said, he can play any style of music, and he has. And no matter where you slot him in, he's there. This is not the John Mayone thing, right? When Billy Sheehan's on an album, Billy Sheehan's on an album without a question. So, and I've been following him since the Talus days. I remember listening to Talus back in the early mid '80s, thinking, "Holy crap, who is this bass player guy?" And then next thing you know, he's everywhere. So yeah, number 3, Billy Sheehan.
Did you ever see him with Talus, Pete?
Yes,
you did.
I saw them open up for Yngwie Malmsteen.
Okay.
Early on, with the first album. Yeah.
It's interesting that you mentioned how dexterous he is, because I saw him live a couple of times with Sons of Apollo. Can he bend his legs? I'm not sure. He walks about stage like that's kind of.
Well, I mean, his face.
This is doing this.
Oh yeah, it's all.
I don't know if there's so much happening here that this can't make the legs work, but they're just kind of like that. The strange old thing.
I always thought he would like Eddie Van Halen on the bass, really, because he did all that tapping. He can play from this way, and then if he would with Steve Vai, especially in the Crossroads series with the Eric Clapton Festival, they will all play guitars fret of each other, 4 guitars in a row, and they're all playing each other's fretboard. I mean, and just an amazing player. And you know what? Yes, you're right. Not only he played like a Mr. Big and all those other hard rock, but he brought the progressiveness to that act. So almost no matter what he's playing, he kind of makes it, larger than life. That's what I thought.
Yeah, he adds like a virtuoso flair to no matter what he does. And
yes.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, back down to the beginning, Armando. Back to you, number 2.
Tony Levin. I'm sorry. And with everything else everyone else said, the work with, King Crimson, he's worked with, again, Gabriel, he's worked with Robert Robertson, he's worked with Gowan on his albums in the 80s. He did 3 albums with Gowan. He's worked with Cher. He's done session work with so many people. And again, when I was listening to Discipline, I was just like, my God, I was like, it was so good and very rhythmic, a very different direction from what they were doing, with Red, etc., Lizard, just totally different direction. He's a monster on the bass, but there's also a lot of space in his playing. Like, he's very sparse. So yeah, that's my number 2.
Hell of a nice guy too, and he doesn't live too far from me actually.
Yeah, he lives close to you.
I was here from Leonardo whenever because he goes up to hang out with Tony quite often. I'll get like a message from Leonardo. It's like, oh, we just drove by near where you live, and I'm like, well, you could have like stopped over and yeah. And he's like, all right, we'll do something. And then he's like, yeah, we just drove by here. I'm like, okay, one of these days. One of these days. Lewis posted something on Facebook today or yesterday about Discipline specifically, and you said it perfect. I don't remember exactly what you said about that album, but it's such a monumental recording for all 4 of those guys on that album.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a massive record. Absolutely.
Massive record. That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
But it was just so different from what was going on. I think at the time, we're talking 81. So, I mean, it was just, and it fit in with kind of like, I guess, like the new wave, sort of, in terms of some of the playing on it. But again, yeah, it was a massive album. It was really good.
Robert Fripp to stay ahead of the curve, always, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Lewis, back.
Let's just hope we get one more tour with Blue. I mean, I think they got to go out with him. One more tour. Because I just, I'm a Blue head, and I think, his vocals on that album are just pure magic. Like, frame by frame is just beautiful.
Well, this was the last one, man. That's it. Like, Baloo already made it. I mean, not Baloo. Fripp made his money. He was
Crazy. You think they're going to come back?
Oh yeah, I think he's done. I think he's a happy dude. Clearly.
You see it every day.
Luis, I think he's going to tour Exposure next year. He's going to bring Peter Gabriel. He's going to bring Adrian Belew, Daryl Hall, Peter Hamill.
Hey.
Anybody that can work with Daryl Hall and make him rock.
Or is that what you went?
I mean, there you go.
I would have liked one more studio album out of this current lineup. I would have liked one studio album from these guys. That's what I would have liked. And then I'd be happy with that.
The thing is that from their perspective, it's super expensive to record.
Yeah, I get it.
They can't really recoup their investment that readily anymore, right? So they're used to the old way. So to them, it now just seems crazy to do it,
I'm just talking selfishly. That's what I would want.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, but we've gotten all these. I mean, they put out a bunch of live albums from the last couple tours. I've got a few of them, and they do mix up the set list a bit. Although I think now they're kind of repeating what they've been doing. But I mean, these have been. I saw them twice in the last couple of years, and damn good. Like life-changing shows. So yeah,
I saw them about a month ago, and they were just unbelievable.
Amazing,
Zappa
right?
band was fantastic opening for them. But Crimson was just so powerful live.
Yeah,
They're in the tense.
once a lifetime band.
I'm seeing the 3 drummers. I'm like, what's the need for the 3 drummers? You get it live.
Oh
It's
yeah,
unbelievable to see live.
Well, it's orchestrated.
Yeah, absolutely.
The whole point. It's that's why it's such genius. Right? Daughter to see them. She was probably 12.
She liked them.
Well, the same year we saw the Who.
Oh, cool.
King Crimson, and Roger Daltrey, right? And she grew up listening to the Who. That was like Tommy was her jam.
Mm-hmm.
That was,
Mm-hmm.
and then one day over breakfast, she gave me her ranking, and she said number 1 had to be Roger Waters. That just blew her mind. Number 2, she said King Crimson, because King Crimson does with sound, what Roger Waters does with video.
Nice.
We have tickets to see Roger Waters on this latest tour that was canceled. This is not a drill.
Yeah.
And we have yet to get any, I'm sorry, Pete, didn't mean to divert, but we have yet to get any information about a new concert date. Yeah.
I think that's going to be across the board for most of these. You're going to have to just wait and see like what's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, and I miss going to concerts. I mean, we've been to so many. I miss going to a show. Like,
Yeah, Kit Griffin's special band.
Yeah.
Well, my
absolutely.
next guy is somebody who I actually know and I get along with well. I don't usually hear his name mentioned, and he's also one of these journeyman bass players who are just kick ass and do all kinds of things. I'm talking about Brian Balor.
Oh yeah. Yep.
He is, this is his current main project, Aristocrats, with
Yeah, I've seen that.
Marco Miniman on drums and Guthrie Govan on guitars. But of course, he's played his whole career with Mike Keneally in every configuration. This is the Beer for Dolphins. If you guys are into metal, he was also the player in all the Death Clock albums with Mike Keneally and with Gene Hoglan on drums. And by the way, if you ever have a chance to see that again, I don't know if that's on the cards, but those shows were incredible because they are playing live and they have the cartoons in the back. And the show is going on, and all these kids come out there and they see these guys and they're like, who are these old guys?
That's the band.
Mike Keneally come out, he's bald and he's got this green Strat, right? And he's just killing it. And they were just very confused by the whole thing, but it's a dynamite concert. So truly, I love this guy's work. He's done a couple of solo albums. He's also done some tours with his wife, who's a singer. I saw them at the Red Line here in Chicago. Brian Balor. If you're not familiar with his work, please check him out. He's a phenomenal.
We'll say the
Aristocrats,
Aristocrats are one of the hottest bands going.
Yep.
He's
Unbelievable.
also playing with Joe Satriani. He's in that band, or was, for a couple tours. He's great. So,
Great choice. Great choice. Chuck, what do you got?
All right. My number two, I speak about him quite a bit. So, this is probably one of the guys that most people here could have probably figured that I would have picked up, was the late Doug Rausch of Caravanserai.
Oh yeah.
What's that? This is a guy that should have been much more famous for the innovations that he brought forth. But his drug use killed him. He worked with Bowie. He worked with Santana, Billy Cobham, for a while. He played with so many different people, but it was his drug use that that actually killed him at the age of 28 in 1979. What's that? He was like one of these guys that was just amazing and very lyrical in his bass playing. He played with Lenny White, what's it, Venusian Summer. This was an amazing guy, and just sadly just didn't live long enough to be the great bass player that everyone should have known what he was. Number two, Doug Rausch.
Great choice. Great choice. All right, Anthony.
Number two, I'm going to Armando's homeland, Mr. Getty Lee. What's there to say about this guy? Sings, plays bass, plays keyboards, does it all. One of my favorite tunes by him is his bass solo on Digital Man,
Nice.
Signals from 1982, just mind-blowing. His bass work is just iconic. Not much else to say about the man, but I miss, not being able to see these guys live ever again. I mean, I got to see him 6 times, and 2015 was the last tour, and I got to see him, thankfully. But Mr. Getty Lee is my number 2 bassist.
Great choice. Steven.
Geddy Lee, isn't it? I thought I was going to be the first to get a chance to mention him, but obviously not. I mean, you can pick any of their albums. You can pick any Rush album, can't you? So I just went with the most recent Clockwork Angels because he was as good then as he was at any stage. The thing that always struck me about Geddy Lee, especially when you saw them live, more than, maybe not any bassist, but most bassists, he decides where the song's going to go. He just picks it up and goes with this direction. And it doesn't matter which era of the band that you're listening to, whether it's the really heavily progressive stuff or the more synth-oriented stuff. He is just the absolute director of what's happening. And the standard of playing that's doing that, especially whilst he's playing pedals and singing and playing keyboards, madness, bonkers. I mean, he made my singers top 5, and he makes my bassist top 5. Getty Lee, outstanding, phenomenal.
Nice.
Any the
Now,
perform-
will he make your keyboard players top 5?
Well, we'll have to wait and see.
That's in 2 weeks' time.
But yeah, and not only all those responsibilities that he have, and he's an MC through the whole night, and
Yeah.
he performs like he moves. He's not a guy that just stand anchored down like John Entwistle. He does quite a bit of stuff, but he doesn't go anywhere. Getty's moving, singing, pedals, keyboard, and then MCing all night. That's amazing.
That's
Yeah,
why,
I mean-
you know, they call Neil the professor. Getty Lee is the director and was the director of that band all throughout the
Indeed.
career.
What struck me is he managed to do all of that, and you watch him play, he's having a great time.
Yeah.
He's not having to think about it all. It's not, I'm doing this now, I'm doing that now, I stand over here now, I have to be there now. He's in the moment. He's loving every second of it, you know?
I think especially those last few tours, Stephen, they just seemed loose all the time. They really
Yeah.
did, compared to maybe the earlier days where,
They were
not
playing
that they
for
were
money.
stiff, but they just seemed like they were having a ball up there.
Yeah, I mean, they were making silly films and making fun of themselves and
Yep.
poking fun at the fans and getting stars involved. They were having a ball, weren't they? Thankfully,
Exactly.
great to see them having a ball, do you know?
I think that's a very good observation, Eric. I saw them on the Tesseract tour, and they were, I mean, I don't think Rush is really a band where you can say that they phoned it in, but it was a very mechanical show. And then tragedy hit them, right? And then after losing essentially their band, when they came back with Vapor Trails, that's when they felt like they had something to prove. And that's when they began to really, I remember I saw a show for that tour. It was in New Jersey.
Netherlands.
Near a jail. I remember it was near a jail because when you parked in the street, there were these people sending signals with mirrors at their.
Help!
I want a ticket. How do you have a
right.
ticket?
Ticket or a hot dog?
The first song in the set was Tom Sawyer. And he finished that and he said, all right, now you can leave. If that's what you're going to play. And to me, that was like a yes, these guys came to play. They're not, you know, so and from that point on, it was all like that. And it was such a joy.
Yeah.
So I love that observation because I completely agree with it. And yeah, Getty Lee. I mean, I didn't mention him. He's an obvious pick, right? But, you know, I've been copying him and doing a poor job my whole life, right? But that's basically, yeah, you got to go with Getty.
Absolutely. Cool. All right, Eric, back to you.
Okay, this guy, it's one of the first fusion bands I started listening to after I had gotten into Mahavishnu and Return to Forever. And it's Gary Willis from Tribal Tech.
Nice.
And, you know, I kind of had just had the big names, and that was probably one of the first fusion bands I got into while they were still doing stuff, and kind of after listening to all the big guys. And George has actually turned me on to Uncle Mo's Space Ranch, so I picked up that one. Just a great bass player, and I love him and Henderson together. Those Tribal Tech records, most of them are just awesome. So
Yeah, George and I talked to Scott about like
I saw that interview. Yeah.
time together and like, you know,
Oh,
oh, you
great,
guys still
great.
friends? You ever going to collaborate again? And Scott's like, we haven't heard from him in like a decade. He's just kind
Wow.
of weird. It's like, it's just weird when you have a band so talented and two guys who work so well together for so many years, and then one just like disappears, and the rest of them are like, what happened to him? You know, we used to do some great things together, and I mean, he kind of said like he would leave it open for working together again with Gary, but it hasn't happened.
Nothing, right?
But yeah, great player, absolutely. All right, George, back to you.
Number is probably the youngest guy that's been said, a guy named Hadrian Furo from France. He came out in 2006 on this thing, John McLaughlin's.
Industrial Zen, yes.
This is like must-have fusion record. And then
That's a great album.
2007 puts out a solo album. He's not proud of anymore, probably because he was so young. He probably looks back on it and he's like, He did this record with Borelli Lagrange. Now he's like, he's almost like the plug-in guy when you want some really impressive bass playing on a record. You get a guy for a couple of tracks that's going to blow minds. This is kind of the guy. The chops are off the charts. I saw him a few years ago with Hiromi after Anthony Jackson got sick. She called him. I mean, he's that kind of guy nowadays. So my number 2 is Hadrian Furo.
Cool. I need to get that McLaughlin album. That's got.
Oh yeah.
You won't regret it.
It's an
What's it
excellent
called,
album.
George? What's the album called?
Industrial
Industrial
Zen,
Zen.
Yeah, I've never even seen that before.
2006.
It's amazing.
Okay.
All right. My next-
Calling Ken Golden. Calling Ken Golden.
Can you help us? Yeah.
Where are you, Ken?
He's out with the wife tonight. All right, Rick,
From
you got.
My number 2 is like you, Pete. Oh, well, you're number 3. Billy Sheehan, and I put Sons of Apollo. And I picked this album out not because that's his best bass work, but that's in the category of progressive metal. Because he did start off with mainly hard rock stuff, and it wasn't until he started experimenting with Steve Vai where that progressive music really take off. He got to show that side of him. But in this band, he showed progressive metal all the way through, thick and thin. And I like this second record more for him, like for performance between the two, because it's more song structured. But anyway, the first album, I think the best of the two, but this for Billy, really something. He really got to shine a lot more in this. And Sons of Apollo was the last concert I saw before everything went down to a halt. Yeah, like you. And I saw him in Toronto, and I got to meet them all backstage, and they got to jam, and they switched instruments. Like Portnoy went on the bass, other guys went on, they all jammed. And but Billy was such a down-to-earth guy. You would think these guys would have tremendous egos, how great they are. But he was just so down-to-earth. He made time for everybody in the meet and greet. But anyway, I just want to say Billy Sheehan, one of my favorite. The only person other than the next one, number 1, could beat Chris Squire. You have to be really that good.
Yep. And I would urge anybody who's a Billy Sheehan fan and has not listened to those Niacin albums, really needs to check them out. It's just basically Billy Sheehan
Hello.
on Hammond organ, and I forget who played drums on
Dennis
Chambers.
Dennis Chambers.
Yeah, that's right. And those are tremendous albums, all instrumental, just really
Fiery stuff. Which is like listening, in my opinion, it's like listening to like very early Tony Williams lifetime, but just more updated.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Some serious Hammond organ on that. Great.
Okay, Eric, you and I are going to have a little chat later. Some CDs. I want the list.
There you go.
They even did a kick-ass cover of Red.
They did. Yes, they did.
Great,
Wow.
great.
In fact, didn't they play? They played that at Nearfest, if I remember correctly.
Yes,
didn't
of course.
they?
Yeah, but the
With
record,
Jobson.
yeah, the record together,
Yeah.
I think probably is Time Crunch.
Yes. That's
Oh,
a good.
Jobson, here we go.
Oh. Yeah, well, the band that Jobson assembled at Nearfest was Benny on guitar, Billy Sheehan on bass, Mangini and Marco Minimum on drums, and Alex Machacek or Manichek or whatever his name is, who plays Holdsworth parts really well.
He's quite talented. Doesn't need to be like a Holdsworth type of guy, so he's actually damn good too.
Yeah,
I like his style.
Yeah, I think he has his own fusion 3-piece, his own fusion trio.
Cool. All right, my number 2 has to be the man who, again, he's no longer with us. We've mentioned him before, but Chris Squire. I cannot not pick Chris Squire. Just such a important part of all those Yes albums. Like, and that's, one of the reasons why you take him out of the equation. No disrespect to Billy Sherwood or the current configuration of Yes, but without Chris Squire, it's not quite the same. And
Something's missing.
great melodic tone, those amazing backing vocals, and anybody who plays a Rickenbacker usually is A-okay in my book. So yeah, he was a legend. He's much missed. Chris Squire, my number 2. Back to Armando.
Okay, Getty Lee, number one. You know, gotta give some props to the Canadiana here. So I mean, from like 74 to 80, all those albums, and then even like 82 with Signals, and yes, even through the the keyboard era in the 80s, but he's amazing. He's amazing. I saw them on one of the last tours. I think they released an EP. I think it was called Flashback. Where they did, it was like a 4-song EP of, like 60s,
Feedback.
feedback. Sorry,
That's right.
thanks, Rick. Thank you.
I was trying to
I
think
saw
of-
them at the Molson Amphitheater in Toronto, and it was an amazing show. And like you guys were saying, they were playing very loose. They were having fun. They wanted to have a lot of fun, and there were a lot. I guess they could be called more serious back in the 70s and 80s, but they just wanted to have fun with what they had. Right? There wasn't anything structured. So, and yeah, what can be said? Everything's been said already. But yeah, Getty Lee's my number one.
Cool. Lewis, number one.
All right. Well, there's a lot of names that haven't been mentioned yet. I'm kind of surprised.
It's fun. Yeah, there's so many great ones. Yeah.
Well, the heart wants what the heart wants, and this is this is like a type. I'm not really sure which of the two to call out, because both of these guys are really important to me individually. Now, and I'm skipping the normal classic. Everybody's mentioned Getty and all those guys, but I think that most people are not aware of the fact that these guys are just incredible musicians, like really, really, really brilliant bass players in particular. And but if I have to pick one right now, I'll throw the other one in the honorable mentions immediately. But I'm gonna have to go with a personal hero of mine who really, really changed the way I thought about bass and bass playing in an important way. And that has to be a controversial figure, but it has to be Scott Tunis from the Frank Zappa band.
Nice.
That man is a beast. There's a reason Frank made him the number one guy to run rehearsals and run the band when he was sick. And that reason is not because he sucks. And if you really want to hear the extent of how he is the low frequency glue in that, because he also plays Moog and other things live with this ensemble. A very good place to go for me would be Make a Jazz Noise here, the live.
Fantastic. Yep, absolutely.
Nice.
But also, if you want to hear him do some crazy cool shit in the studio, Ship Arriving Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch, and so many others. Broadway the Hard Way. I'm a big Zappa aficionado, and I think Scott does not get nearly a fraction of the credit he deserves. That guy is a monstrous bass player, and that's my number one choice.
He was the guy in that band throughout the 80s. I mean,
Yep.
without a question. Yeah.
And he could actually get a very serviceable slap with a pick.
Whoa.
It's a very this is an idiosyncrasy for me, but I hate slapping the bass.
So do I.
Like spanking. It's like but when I saw him do it in the little VHS tape, it was like, all right, I'm safe. I know how to do it, right? So I don't have to learn how to, So I just love that guy. And I was not able to see the recent tour that they did with King Crimson because I was in Mexico. But everybody who saw it said the same thing. They just can't get your eyes off him when the Zappa band is on. He's just an incredible musician, So Scott Tunis.
Nice.
Great pick. Chuck, you're number one.
All right. Like I said, going away from the norm when it comes to bass players. Another bass player that I love that sadly has been incapacitated for the last decade or so, Eberhard Weber, his debut album, Colors of Chloe. One of the masters of the upright, the the upright electric bass. So he was one of those innovative bass players that played the upright, the electric upright. And this is an amazing album. Even all the stuff that he's ever played in as well. He's played with Kate Bush, other musicians. Other people have actually asked for him to play bass on there. But his solo stuff, his debut album, Colors of Chlorine, what's up from 1974, Eberhard Weber, is my number one.
That is also Leonardo Pavlovich's favorite bass player.
Oh, he's phenomenal. He's just amazing, man. Nice lyrical bass player. Not flashy, but just amazingly brilliant. Excellent composer, too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Great choice. Anthony, you're number one.
My number one, as people have already said it, but I'm going with Chris Squire. Drama is one of my favorite records that he appears on. He is all over this record, vocally and playing the axe. I mean, he's just all over this record. His tone is phenomenal. Chris Squire is my all-time favorite bass player. He's been probably for years. As Rick said, Fish Out of Water is just pure magic. So I'm going with Chris Squire as my number one my favorite bass player, and Drama is one of my favorite records. His tone on this is second to none.
Nice.
Steven, I'm assuming that's your pick, right?
Well, rather than just repeat what's just been said, I have no idea what you could possibly be talking about. Do you know? He's my number one. I was going to pick something else there just to say somebody else's name, but yeah, Chris Squire's my number one. And I've got Drama here as well. We went in depth on this the other week, but the band was falling apart. You lose a singer, you lose a keyboard player. It should make no sense. Who should step up? The guitarist should step up. And Steve Howe does. He's good on the album. That's not what this album's all about, is it?
Yeah, it's Chris Squire.
It's Chris Squire's album. He stepped up and made sure that band was in safe water. So Chris Squire's my number one for the same reasons that everyone said, and many more.
Yep. Cool. Thanks. Eric, who you got?
Strike three, Chris Squire. He's my favorite. I have to put him in there. So everything's been said. George?
Legend.
My guy, number one is a guy named Dominique De Piazza.
Love him.
He came about in the early 90s on this album.
That album, yep. Great
John
album.
McLaughlin, Kay Allegria, acoustic trio based, just like a wow moment. The guy's technique's incredible. Really unusual style, raking down with his thumb. I never seen a guy use so much thumb. This trio piece with Dennis Chambers and Borelli Legren is just insane. And then get this, another album, Mehdi Gerbil, piano quartet, and then another one. Unfortunately, most of this stuff's hard to find, and I've never been able to see him because he doesn't play here, which kind of sucks. But my standard for this was what kind of a guy whose mere presence on the record makes you check the record out? That's the guy. He's the wow factor guy. So, Dominique De Piazza.
Especially that McLaughlin album. That's a pretty damn good album.
And of course, John being John, he didn't let the band last. He did a couple records and they hit the road. That's John.
That's John. Mr. McLaughlin. All right, Rick, you're number one.
Well, like my fellow Canadian brother, I'm gonna pick Getty Lee. This is his solo album, but my favorite of a live performance to hear his voice in the top of his prime and playing bass like that, like we were saying earlier. All the World of Stage is a great performance at the legendary Massey Hall in Toronto, which is legendary venue in itself, right? Yeah, it's a big deal. And for them to be one of the biggest, loudest bands of that time to ever play there. Because it used to be just acoustics and folk singers and, novelty act, but they brought hard rock. Everybody been there since then. Dream Theater, everybody. But Russ blew the doors off that Massey Hall with this show. But anyway, Getty Lee, of course, for all the reason given. And there's also a cool book. When I talk about bassists, he got a book out on bass, and it's phenomenal. He brings all these great stars from John Paul Jones to anybody that was somebody on the bass, sharing their thoughts on it. So if you want to check out that book, I got that coming. It's an expensive one, but it's
Yeah, it's like $80 or something.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
a thick book too.
Yeah,
Yes, it is.
it's huge.
So, and also speaking of Rush, they got the video of that concert now on demand. You can watch it at home from October 1st to October 8th on demand. The Rush, the director cut of that last concert they did.
which was fantastic.
Very cool.
And Getty just signed a deal to do an autobiography also.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah.
There's some news of Getty and Alex doing some work together. Like Alex talked about it a few months ago in an interview that they're going to get together and do some work together. Whether it comes
I
out,
hope. Yeah, that'll be
yeah,
great.
whether it comes out, yeah. But Neil Peart was such a force.
His lyrics.
Yep. All right, my number one. I've always loved him. I think, like in recent years, he's just kind of moved up the ranks really high for me. And we've talked about him a bit tonight. And I think that when you listen to the music of Rush, Getty is just such a big, huge part of their music. And I find, and I love Alex Lifeson to death. I love Neil, but I find that I listen to a lot of Rush now because I want to hear Getty. And he's so prominent in the mix. And I mean, like Hemispheres and Permanent Waves and Moving Pictures and all those great albums. I mean, even the more recent ones, the 80s ones, Signals, he's so impressive, and it's so musical and lyrical. And that's what I like to hear in a bass player. And it reminds me like kind of when Iron Maiden first came on the scene, and every song you heard Steve Harris big up front in the mix. I like that. When you got a good bass player that is there to be heard on par with the guitars and everything else, that's pretty special to me. And I think Getty is just, he's an absolute virtuoso. He took what he learned from guys like Chris Squire and Paul McCartney and John Entwistle, and he created his own voice, and love him to death, man. Geddy Lee, for me, has become one of my favorite bass players in recent years. And he's just absolutely amazing in every way.
Well said, buddy. Well said.
Yeah.
Of course.
So honorable mentions. So who's got some?
I got a few.
I'm sure.
So do I. Mhm. I got quite a few.
Let's go back to the beginning. So Armando, you got a couple honorable mentions throughout there?
Paul Jackson, who worked with
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you. Who worked with Herbie Hancock with Headhunters and
Great
Rust and Manchild. And by the way, again, Pete, thank you for the Herbie Hancock ranking. My debit card hates you for it, but I mean, I had a stack.
There's a lot of good Herbie Hancock albums. Yeah.
I had a stack that came in the house, so that was like, mother, my God. I was like, Mom's like, oh, again, Jesus Christ. So, but seriously, I mean, it was just like, you went shopping. Yeah. What the hell? So, yeah.
Glad to be of service, Armando.
Thank you. Thank you very much. No, Paul Jackson, John Wetton is another one.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've only got two, so
that's okay. It's all right. We'll make up for it. I'm sure everybody else. Lewis, I'm sure you got plenty.
All right. Just number one that nobody's mentioned, and it's criminal. I have to talk about one Ray Shulman.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He was on my list too. Yep. Yeah.
I mean, this guy, again, the bass is not what people normally pick out from a song, right? But if you do, and if you listen to Gentle Giant bass lines, this man is a genius, truly.
Very difficult lines too.
Yeah. I have learned a ton just trying to just play along to these records, and this one in particular.
Love that album.
It is a very, very, very good musical education. So Ray Shulman has got to be there for sure. Another one that has not mentioned that I think deserves a mention is Jonas Helberg.
Another one of mine.
Okay. This is one of the many albums he did with Sean Lane and Jeff Sipe, who now he goes by Apartment Q258. I don't understand that, but this is called Temporal Analogues of Paradise.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. If
you
like
from hell right there.
Blistering solos, but melodic. get this stuff.
Okay,
Amazing.
I'm gonna get a list from Eric and from Lewis. You know, like just send them over, and George, just send them over.
Nobody mentioned him. I was kind of hoping somebody would, but of course Jeff Berlin.
Well, there's another one of mine. You got my whole list covered, man. So
And just quickly, this guy, I wasn't expecting to hear his name, but he is one of my favorite modern players. I'm talking about, this is a record he made with Kamasi Washington, and I am talking about
Love that album.
this record is unbelievable.
That's a great album.
And Thundercat's bass work is just stupidly great.
Thundercat is very lyrical.
I don't stay here all night. I just want to mention Miroslav Vitruvius, who was also, well, what can I say about him that people don't already know? But this solo record in particular is a personal favorite of mine.
yeah,
The Infinite Search. There's this other YouTuber, Rick Beato, who was his TA when he was in college before he became a professor. So this guy is a beast as well, Miroslav. And
those early Weather Report albums are amazing,
Especially live.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those are just some names that I wanted to throw out there that were not mentioned.
And Lewis, I heard Jeff Berlin was in Brand X for about 2 weeks. Because I think he was the original replacement for Percy Jones. I don't know what happened, but seemed like it fell apart pretty quick.
Yeah, I would imagine that would happen.
I think Bruford.
There's a little bit of chaos going on in the Brand X camp.
I think.
See that, right? Yeah.
I mean, if Percy finally left, it's bad.
Yeah.
Because if you know anything about Percy Jones, he's a very chill dude. He really.
And for him to leave like that, there's a lot of dissension there.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm not intimate with any of the details, but I know enough to know that it's chaotic. They played at the Proktoberfest here in Chicago, so I got to see a little bit of the rolling tsunami that they brought with them. And yeah.
Chuck, you got any honorables?
The guy that's always mentioned, his guitar playing has soiled his reputation, but a great bass player, Mike Rutherford, Genesis, Marcus Miller, Holger's Suzuki from Cannes, Greg Lake, playing with some very difficult stuff. Mike Howlett from Ghana, Alfonso Johnson with Weather Report, Trevor Dunn with Mr. Bungle, and Ralph Armstrong with John Luke Ponty. You got these amazing bass players, that no one's mentioned.
That's right. This assignment was deadly to me, man. It was like
I was going to say to Pete in the chat, Sal and Gary and I were talking when you guys did the 1974. I'm like, this should have been a month-long series.
Yeah.
You could have done 5 each week for a month.
Most definitely.
Crazy, right? Anthony, you got any honorables that haven't been mentioned yet?
Yes, you guys ready to drink? Mr. John Wetton. I mean, what can I say about Mr. John Wetton? UK, King Crimson, Asia.
Everyone drink.
Very noticeable tone by him. I mean, he's not lauded as a great bass player, but I think he's a very underrated bass player.
Well,
of course,
he's a
this
great
is
bass
one of the
player.
greatest records ever. And another guy that I want to mention that wasn't mentioned, who I think is really underrated, more of a kind of like hard rock metal type of guy, Tony Franklin.
Yeah. Oh, Tony Franklin's amazing. Yeah. Really good choice. Good choice. Steven, you got any honorables?
I'll pick out the ones that have not been mentioned. So I've got Michael LePond, Symphony X, a variety of different things. Larue, Silent Assassins, Effector. Too much to mention. You look at his discography, and he's basically, if they've existed, he's played with them. Steve Vantsis, who's been Fish's bassist for a long, long time, and basically has a massive hand in actually writing most of the more recent material for the last maybe probably 4 or 5 albums. And if you see them live, handles the Marillion stuff very well indeed. A personal favourite of mine, who's probably under the radar, John Jewett.
Yes, IQ and Arena.
Lots of bands that I love. IQ, Arena, Frost, Arc, Jadis. He doesn't stick around too long, but he makes a mark. And he's a very dark player, and I really like that.
Rain. Now he's playing with the Rain.
Yeah. Marius Duda, who's just outstanding, very melodic. He's the centre of that band for obvious reasons. He basically is the band in many ways, but just outstanding. Colin Edwin, Porcupine Tree, who's crazy good. Did I have anything else on the longer list? I don't think so. Not very much. Martin Mendez, Opeth. I wanted to mention him as well. But yeah, I mean, you could go on and on and on. I mean, I've got more on the list, but I'll stop.
Anthony, we got like a celebrity death match going on over there.
Yeah, the cat's
I had to go feed Oliver. He was driving me nuts.
Like, Daddy,
You were there and then you were
food for
gone.
crying out loud. I'm hungry, damn it.
Talking about the basis already.
He was knocking everything around on the table.
Our dog is the same way. Tina's the same way.
Well, it's clear who's the boss.
I was just gonna say,
Wow.
who's the master?
They're the boss. We just pay the bills.
That's all. That's it.
Yeah.
Eric.
Yeah, pretty much.
Any honorables for you, Eric?
Yeah, obviously, you don't want to forget the guys like Getty Lee and Tony Levin and Stanley Clark. I love that Lewis brought up Ray Shulman. But I think somebody who has a ton of great bass lines that we didn't bring up tonight was Dave Hope from Kansas.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
I love, even though, I know there's a lot of Squire influence, Dave Miros from Spock's Beard, and actually Randy George from Neil Morris Band. I think they both are great players. And obviously Stanley Clark was brought up as well, and that should wrap it up for me.
Cool. George.
I got a few. A friend of mine from Russia, Anton Davidyanets. He's kind of on the younger side. Doesn't have any solo albums yet. He's just been more of a guy that's played on albums, but he's a comer. Adam Nitty, he's an all-arounder, big talent out of Atlanta. Antoine Fafard from Canada, another guy, great player from Spaced Out, another friend of mine. And Mr. Golden wanted a mention for Sean Malone, fantastic player.
Yeah.
To me, the best metal guy I've ever heard. If you want to hear this guy, this album's phenomenal. Agora, self-titled, bass tone, bass lines on this album, instantly memorable.
Sweet, man.
And then he did a solo album, actually a rock guy that did a fusion solo album, Cortland. Ken used to sell this. I think it's out of print now, but yeah, he was in a death metal band also, but for me, this is where it's at with Sean Malone.
But he was a faculty member in Pittsburgh, right? He was in the music faculty.
Was it Pittsburgh?
Something like that. He had like I remember reading when he died. He was an associate professor somewhere.
It definitely was. I don't remember what school it was at. But yeah.
He used to do combo clinics with Gary Willis to give you an idea of the level of player he is.
Beyond the beyond, of course. That's
right. I actually got to see him. He played with Portnoy's Rush tribute here in the mid 2000s. Great performance.
Oh, was it the Sea Monster thing? What was that called?
Yeah, Cygnus and the Sea Monsters.
Right, that's right.
And Johnny and Scott are friends.
Oh, and Gordian Knot. He was in. He had a
Gordian
Knot. That was cool too.
Yeah, absolutely. Rick, you got any left?
Yeah, what's not been mentioned, because you guys just pick it up. The only one who haven't been mentioned, surprisingly not, Roger Waters. And also Pete from Marillion.
Yep.
Yes, I have to mention him. But I was kudos to Eric for mentioning Randy George. I think he doesn't get mentioned enough in the Neil Morris Band. I think that was fantastic. No, I think everybody covered everybody in my top 10. I wrote 10 just in case for today, and everybody's been covered. So great mind, think alike.
There you go.
I thought for sure you were going to say Jonas Reingold.
I'm going to say him now. There you go. He was on my honorables. Yep.
Great.
That include him. I mean, ultra talented dude. I mean, that guy is absolutely killer. I think the only ones left that I have that nobody's mentioned, Jimmy Johnson, terrific fusion bass player who's played with everybody. I mean, Holdsworth and Mike Stern, I mean, and countless others. And the only other one I got is Mark Egan.
Oh, yes.
Reckless Bass Monster, played with the Pat Metheny group. He was with Elements for many years, a lot of good solo albums. He's incredible. Also, local guy from Warwick, New York, just a few towns over from here. So
there's one guy who I think deserves just a quick mention, but he's French. He plays with the band Morgable, but I can't remember his name. This dude is off the chain.
Yeah, that band is sick. Yeah,
I'm so embarrassed that I can't remember his name, but that guy is just ridiculous.
You got his solo album? It's really good.
Yes.
I have not heard that.
It's that guy is also ridiculously awesome. Yes.
And George, who was the guy we were talking about from Consider the Source? I can't remember his name.
I can't remember his name either.
Oh, yeah.
He's amazing.
Yes.
John Ferrara, maybe?
Ferrara. Right, Ferrara.
Super slapper.
Have you ever seen them play live?
I have.
Ferrara has this, they both have these insane pedal boards.
Yep.
I don't even know how they can hook them up and carry them around. But Ferrara also has the actual pedals. And he's not a very big guy, so he has a stool when he's playing the pedals. So he's actually like tapping the pedals instead of angling with his feet. He's just kind of dancing on them, literally, while he's doing this crazy stuff and doing all the other stuff. He's incredible.
He is.
Like the drummer is a beast, but you hardly notice him with the other two guys there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The bass player for
And Adrian Blues bass player too, Julie Slick's pretty good too.
I'm sorry, guys. The bass player is Ivan Rubin.
Yeah.
From Morgable. And then we also forgot about Hugh Hopper as well.
That's what I was just, Hugh Hopper and Roy Babington also. I mean, they've had two great.
Oh, yeah. How can we forget him? Yes.
And I don't like the band, but this guy's a great guitar, a great bass player. Yannick Top from Magma, right? I mean.
Oh, yes. That makes me
Not to mention Magma.
He's a great bass player.
What's happening in the world? Wow.
Could Pete be changing his mind about Magma? Or
No. So.
That sounded to me like a deep-seated declaring of love for Magma there, Peter.
Not gonna happen. Nope.
Just checking, Pete. Just making sure.
I just because he is a great bass player. I don't like their music, but I thought for sure Lewis was going to mention them tonight. That's why I kind of kept my mouth shut. I was like, all right. But
Do you know I've not heard any Magma, and from what you've said, I don't want to.
I don't think that.
They're not for everybody. But you might love them. I don't know. I seem to be one of the few who don't like them, so I don't know.
There's quite a lot of people that don't like
No, I'll keep a distance from them. It just doesn't sound interesting from what you've been
I will say, if you want to investigate Magma and kind of get a good feel for what they're all about, but maybe with less of the over-the-top craziness, check out their early live album, because that was the one that I could stomach, at least partially. They're great musicians. I just whole Cobain thing, just like I just can't do it. Can't do it. I've tried.
Well, anything that's
It's
too
all about
distracting
the
like
bass.
that, I wouldn't even bother.
That's fine. But if you have a chance to see a concert, you should go. So you know for sure.
They are an
awaken your spirit.
They play in clubs and places that are not super expensive.
Sure, I'll drag Bob with me. He'll sit through it and throw me out of the house after the show. He'll pack my bags and kick me out.
Do a little pre-show drinking.
Enough of this shit.
All right. I think we've named a lot of really great players tonight. So, but for those of you watching who feel that we missed out on some spectacular prog rock, prog metal, jazz fusion bass players, please put them down in the comments below and list your 5 favorites or your 10 favorites or whatever. There's a lot of good ones, and I'm sure there's some we've missed. But I want to thank the crew here for doing the homework, putting together the list. This was a lot of fun talking about the great bass players. So visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. For Chuck Alvarez, Louis Nasser, Armando Venditti, Eric Porter, Stephen Reed, Anthony Ferraro, Rick Labonte, and George Lemay, I am Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody. See you next week in the Prog Seat. Take care.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.